Kyle Long, Mike Renner from CBS Sports Pushing the Pile, talking about Harold Fannin Jr. and the Browns tight ends.
I think he went to an awesome situation because I always saw Fannin the way the Ravens use Isaiah Likely. I think he is the type of tight end that bridges the gap between tight end and slot receiver. That he can block on the move. He's not a true inline guy. If you're a one tight end offense who needs him to block a defensive end, it's just like
a sprint rollout type protections he could do, like Kelsey type blocking.
Yes, he is fantastic at that. Coming across split zone, he comes across formation, chops a defensive end, you're golden. He can do that. But if you ignore him, as your second tight end in an offense, a lot of times, when you're in 12 personnel, play action passes, things of that nature that, it's confusing when a guy is leaking out from, a double wide position. When two guys are leaking out, it can lead to some assignment confusion. And he's a guy that can take advantage of those mismatches, take advantage of if he gets leverage mismatches. And he goes to a place where they're going to use a ton of two tight ends. Like that's been their bread and butter in Cleveland is a lot of 12 personnel. So I'm very excited to see, obviously, a good year is still probably like 500-600 yards for him. But I think that's well within reach given what we saw on tape from him.
The other thing, Quincy, is both Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, I would expect to lean on those tight ends.
Yeah. I think the big thing for Harold Fannin, right, because we know he can receive, we know he can catch after the run. Run after the catch. But I think it's going to be a question of okay, how valuable is he in that 12 personnel package, right? The Browns going to run a lot of gap schemes. They're going to run a lot of counter, which means they're going to ask Harold Fannin to be a wrap blocker, right? A wrap player for them every once in a while, which means he's going to come across the formation, wrap around, and try to kind of be a lead blocker for this team in certain run plays. If he can do that successfully on top of what he can do as a receiver, that opens up a ton of flexibility because the Browns at their best, right? When you look at 2021, their year where they had the best run performance, they ran 50% gap run versus zone. They were like 50-30 gap versus zone. So they're going to run more gap schemes now, which means that's going to be a lot more predictable out of 11 personnel, which way the ball's going, because the tight end's going to be a huge tell. If they can run those schemes out of 12, that's going to make them less predictable, and it provides a lot of opportunity for them to fake him as a wrap block and then kind of sneak him underneath in a play action, get him underneath, get the ball to his hands. If he can successfully block on the move like we saw him do at Bowling Green, albeit in the MAC, which is different than the NFL, right? But if we see that during the preseason, right, we can get excited about Harold Fannin receptions. But if we're watching the preseason and we're seeing Harold Fannin get out in front and block successfully on counter plays or split zone, like they said, that's when you should really get excited because that's when that's how you know he's going to be used a lot, is if he can do that successfully.